sweet, and my wife is even sweeter. And I am blessed to have her here with us today. And it's taken a lot to try and convince her that this was a good idea. So I'm just thrilled that she's still sitting here. She hasn't beat me up with anything that's in front of her or run out of the room screaming yet. But
I might.
I think she has an awful lot to share. And so I'm glad she's here with us. And we started out with some ice cream. We ran into some technical difficulties, so hers is almost soup and mine is gone. I had peanut butter party, a Blue Bunny flavor. Really good stuff. Really good stuff. Trying to finish out that one carton. And Heather has pralines and cream, which is not how I ever heard it said previously. I've always heard it as pralines and cream pretty much everywhere else we lived. And then we got here, and I think we were at an ice cream shop, and I thought somebody was like,
No, I wouldn't go that far. But
they were having some kind of digestive issues. Like, what are you talking about? Pralines and cream. Pralines? What?
All right, let's be nice.
And then I figured out what it was. And now I love it. It's growing on me, just like all the y'alls and the yats. We were just talking to Robin a little bit about yats down in New Orleans. And we had a Cajun night before Christmas this year.
That was a good book.
That was a gift.
Yeah, that was a good book. I like that one.
That with the kids on Christmas Eve. That was really, really cool.
Yep.
But that's not why we're here.
That's right.
We're here to hear from my lovely wife about, what's so sweet about being a pastor's wife. We'll try and start out positive, and then maybe we'll talk about the things that are not so sweet. And one of the reasons why we're talking about this is we know there's a lot of folks that probably struggle out there. So this is to kind of say, hey, you're not alone. And hey, there's a way to kind of deal with this and to continue to move on. We'll talk about a trip we took during this break. It's been an extended break, so excited to get back in here. And this is not necessarily about Open Arms. We've actually had a really great experience at Open Arms thus far, surprisingly a good experience at Open Arms. So this is more just about what we've seen and how we've seen it affect other people as well. So,
yes,
starting out with the positives. You're on the spot now. What's so sweet about being a pastor's wife?
All right, this is way out of my comfort zone.
Yes, it is.
I am not one to normally come on here. This is totally Emil's thing. But I would say a positive being a pastor's wife is the community. Usually it is amazing to be with a group of believers, and people are just usually so loving and so warm and so welcoming. Especially here, Open Arms has been a great, great place for us. And they have definitely embraced our family, and it's great to be just among people who we know support us and love us. But I don't know.
That's not always the case.
No, that's not always, but that's not always the case. And I know that there are plenty of pastors' wives out there, for sure, that don't feel that. And I have had my moments where I have not felt that. And you're not alone. That's all I'm going to say. So
what else do you see as sweet about being a pastor's wife?
I honestly never. Okay, so I'll go back. Like, I honestly never thought that I would be a pastor's wife. And I remember when Emil came to me and said, I think God's calling me to be a pastor. And I was like, oh, okay. So this has been a journey for me. Jesus has always been a part of my life. My parents have always brought me to church from when I was little. Excuse me. But I think that through time, my relationship with Jesus has really, really changed. And he is really my rock and my stronghold. And as far as being a pastor's wife, I think that it has strengthened my relationship with God, definitely. And it also is, it's always, for our kids, it's a big part of their lives too, by us being pastor's wife, pastor, and so.
It does definitely, ministry. I mean, I'm not a pastor's wife or spouse or whatever, but I'm a pastor, and I can agree that ministry forces you to rely on Jesus an awful lot more.
Yes.
And usually because ministry could be brutal.
Yes. I mean, I think before you went into ministry, like I had a relationship with Jesus, but I feel like it strengthened it even more because you're constantly going to him, because like sometimes you feel like no one else in the world understands what you're feeling in those moments. And but you know he does. So you go straight for him. Like, and at least I know for me, that's like it definitely has strengthened my relationship with Jesus. Just knowing that he's there no matter what.
So what are some of those moments? What's not so sweet about ministry? How does ministry force you to your knees, force you to rely on Jesus?
I think, excuse me, I think being a pastor, a pastor's wife, and pastor's family, you are put out there way more than other people in the congregation are. And I think that, I mean, I struggle. I know for me, I am the type of person that I don't like to be in the spotlight ever. And so this has sort of thrown me into, oh, what does that person think about me? Or what does that person think about my family? Or, oh, what does that person think about my husband today? So I think that it is, those moments definitely come where you're like, man, I'm not going to get through this unless I go to my Lord and he's going to pull me out of this or help us through this. So.
Well, and I think it's not just if you typically think about that more, because I mean, I'm a people pleaser type person. I want to do the right thing and look good in front of everybody. And, that's been a growth area for the last 11, 12 years. But sometimes I think you're forced into thinking like that because you know what happens if certain people don't. Right? Like, so even if you didn't already kind of lean that way, which it's bizarre how this profession kind of lends itself to attracting certain kinds of people, like me, like you, and then it just totally exacerbates that particular problem because you know that, oh, if this person isn't happy or that person isn't happy, they're going to make my life miserable, or they're going to make my husband's life miserable. And so that's why
make your family's life
makes,
not
exactly.
fun at all.
So everybody has to deal with the fact that dad's grumpy because so-and-so did this, that, or that, or said this or that or the other thing. So it forces that kind of public profile that
sometimes you don't want.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just want to be like everybody else, you know? So.
I mean, like, we're doing this, and this is a very high-profile kind of thing, and part of me wonders what in the world I'm thinking, because I see folks that are celebrities of a variety of kinds, whether because of wealth, power, politics, they're in leadership of some kind, they're rock stars, actors, actresses. I get the fact that being in the spotlight sucks so bad. And we're not even in that kind of a spotlight. I mean, we got, there's just a couple hundred people maybe that we're kind of in the spotlight of at a given church anytime. But it's amazing how just that's being kind of at the focal point of almost everybody that's involved in ministry can really make things messy, right?
Yeah.
So what about that? I guess what kinds of things have forced you, like we talked about with Jesus? What are the specific kinds of situations? I know we've talked a lot about trust, trusting people, letting people close, because not everybody has got the purest of motives, and you don't always know that right away. And some people can be really, really, really sweet, and they say all the right things, and they quote Bible verses and all that kind of stuff, and then they turn into these monsters. Like they're just like everything about the kingdom of God that Jesus has taught goes out the window when a certain thing doesn't happen or something like that. So talk about that a little bit.
So as far as trust and stuff, well, I mean, I know for me, I'm usually a pretty trusting person. I think when we first started in ministry, I think I probably trusted people a little bit too much. Like I looked at the congregation and I was like, all right, who are our people here? And I think that through time, I've had, like, I know for me and for our family, I've definitely had to be like, okay, like you really have to figure out who you can actually trust. And will you make the wrong decision sometimes? Yes, you will. And, but I want to believe that most people have really good intentions. But we have been put in situations where, trust has been broken, and it's an unfortunate reality. And it's not even just in ministry, it's just in life. I think sometimes that, it happens, and there's just, I don't know.
Well, I used to think I was a pretty trusting person, but I think you were probably a little bit more trusting than me.
Yeah, probably.
I've always known people are pretty terrible.
I always try to look for the good in everyone. And when that, I guess I sometimes I don't know, maybe I care about people probably way too much, and I care about what people think way too much. And I think that's just part of me.
Well, and that's the thing. You care about people often a lot more than they care about themselves, or you care about ministry, and especially when your livelihood is kind of caught up in it. I know I see a lot of guys that are in far worse situations than we're in. Mm-hmm. And not just in this particular sense about having a great, warm, loving congregation, but just what's happening to the church at large, how it's in decline, and it's hard to get people there, to get people engaged, to find the resources financially to keep going. And so, that also forces you to care more about it, right? Because if the church that employs your spouse and therefore puts food on your family's table is at risk, right? And it seems like this inevitable slide right now across the country.
Yes.
That that puts even more pressure to care about it, and then at the same time there are more people that care less and less about it as an institution. They may love Jesus, but here we are caring about a church that sometimes, again, this isn't necessarily open arms, this is just a general kind of thing right now. Right. Caring about something that few people really, really care as much about.
Yeah.
And you talked about trust. Do you remember the Bible passage we talked about with that fairly recently?
About trust? I'm not sure.
In John chapter 2.
John chapter 2? Okay.
It's the very end. I will
bring it up.
bring it up on my phone here, my Bible app.
I don't have my phone, sorry.
YouVersion Bible app commercial, real quick. So, the very end of chapter 2, Jesus has turned water into wine and thrown one heck of a party. He has cleansed the temple, got a whip of cords and drove all these money changers out and had some really harsh words, talked about destroying the temple and in 3 days raising it up. And then in verse 23 it says, "Now when he was in Jerusalem at the Passover feast, many believed in his name when they saw the signs that he was doing. But Jesus on his part did not entrust himself to them, because he knew all people and needed no one to bear witness about man, for he himself knew what was in man." So, Jesus says, basically through this, what they said at the start of X-Files. You ever see X-Files? I don't know.
I've seen
sci-fi.
X-Files.
Okay.
Not many episodes, but yes.
Trust no one.
Ooh, trust no one.
So Jesus here, right, he's got all these people who are saying how great and wonderful he is because of the stuff that he's doing for them, sort of the sideshow. The people get drawn to miraculous things. They get drawn to cool stuff, right? And then they think you're great because of the great stuff you're doing, but then as soon as you're not doing the great stuff they want you to do, then they don't think you're so great anymore. But Jesus has all these people who are like, "Oh yeah, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus," and then Jesus here, right, says, "Yeah, I'm not going to trust you."
Okay.
Because he knows what's in the heart of man. What's in the heart of human beings. Mm-hmm. And so like you've described, maybe you got there in a bumpy way.
Yeah.
But that there's a certain part of you that's not even for me. It's not even for your parents, your siblings. It's certainly not for folks at church, even your brothers and sisters in Christ, right? It's a certain part of you only for God. Like, you got to trust in God above even the people you love the most, even people that have never even given you a reason to doubt, even people that might never intentionally do something to hurt you. It might just be life that happens.
Right.
But the fact is Jesus is saying most people are kind of looking out for themselves.
Yeah.
And
true.
so even the best of people is going to let you down.
Right.
So don't trust them, or at least not completely.
Right. And I mean, so did you bring up that we were recently away for in Arizona?
I didn't yet, but you can.
Well, I mean, just to go along with that, we went to Shepherd's Canyon Retreat Center in Arizona. We were supposed to go in April 2020, but that didn't happen. But we were able to talk through some of our ministry stuff with people there. And I think, just to go along with trust, I learned a lot about myself there as far as like expectations. And I think I just have such high expectations, like for myself and for others. And then when they let me down, it just stinks. Just terrible. But I learned that a lot about that while we were away, because there have been times in ministry that I have expected people to come alongside us and to help us. And there have been times that has not happened, and it's been really, those moments are terrible. And you definitely need Jesus in those moments, because he's the only one who's going to get it. So.
Yeah. Well, and that's why this podcast is Sweet Jesus, because it's saying in at least saying among many things perhaps that Jesus is the heart of everything, and these organized churches, institutions, however, folks want to think about it, they're a mess.
Yeah.
And the way people function inside them sometimes, especially when tensions are high, they really are the worst examples. You know, it's true what a lot of people say about the church because we've lived through it. We know it. And, you know, Jesus, as I read in John chapter 2, just before that last part that I read about trusting people, you know, he cleanses the temple. The temple, you know, God's house, God's church is being abused basically for things that aren't what he originally intended it, right? And so Jesus gets mad. Jesus gets mad at religious people. So if you're mad at religious people out there, if you're mad at church people, you know, join the club. Jesus is too. Or
Yeah.
at least he was in that passage.
Right.
You talked about expectations. One of the things that they shared with us at our time out there at Shepherd's Canyon, anger is usually got a bunch of hurt underneath. You know, you pull back the blanket or the sheet or something, and underneath there's all this hurt. So you've been hurt by people.
Mm-hmm.
And usually that hurt is because of what you said, expectations.
Unmet expectations. Yeah.
You had these expectations that people would stand up and support and help and come alongside and be the friends and fellow believers that they claimed they were, and they didn't meet those expectations, and it hurts. But then beneath those expectations are needs, where we all have needs. We need people. We need community. We need folks that we feel like you can, you know, rely on, trust that they will stand there
that they care
and fight for you.
Care. Yeah.
And far too often, people's minds are preoccupied elsewhere with their own problems, their own family, all these other kinds of things. But I think what they forget is that people like you don't have all of those connections, that support system, right? They can easily forget because they've got a kid or grandkid or grandparent or aunt or uncle or, you know, their high school best friend or something that lives relatively close by, and they have that network apart from church. But for ministry families, that's hard to develop. I mean, we're here only 2 years, and I think we got a pretty good support system kind of building, but it's been 2 years. How do you do in 2 years what most people have done over the course of decades? So if the church doesn't meet those things, or is even part of the problem, what do you got?
You don't have any.
What do you got?
Yeah, you don't have a support system. Yeah.
And I mean, you didn't mention this. I know that we've some of the things. I know this isn't the most comfortable thing for you, so I'm trying to help. I'm not trying to talk too much.
Yeah.
But we've talked, I think, about most of these things before, including, you know, our personal and professional. Those parts of our lives are all intertwined, right? It's rare where you see that in other realms, in other people's lives, where it's all so intimately connected that, you know, the personal stuff and the professional stuff, it's all the same.
Yeah.
Which is partly why we care maybe more about the institution, so to speak, the organized body of Christ at a particular location, right? You care about that way more because you sort of have to. It's your family, your adopted family, and it's your livelihood. It's all of that together. And that gets complicated.
It does. And I mean, to go along with that a little bit, it's like we also never have family nearby. Like, so we rely on our church family probably a lot more maybe than we should, but I don't know.
We do.
Right.
Maybe in the trust area that we talked about. Like we have to sort of trust them a little bit more because we have no choice. Yeah. But I think you also find, you know, the more I'm honest about it, I guess, is you just sort of learn to go it alone. You know, you sort of become.
You do. Yeah.
And that probably puts more pressure on yourself, on us, right? We put it on ourselves a little bit because it's hard to ask for help because of the messiness of like, well, first off, Americans don't ask for help. Like just
No,
generally
not
speaking,
really. Not
your
really.
average American would rather die than ask for help.
You think that's true?
I think that's true
Oh.
for more than 50% of Americans, I think.
Okay.
Maybe not much more than 50%, but so this isn't something that's only us. This is a societal problem.
Okay.
But I think our situation forces us in that direction a lot more. That we are, you know, we're kind of out on our own, just trying to make it the best we can. And,
right.
you know, if nobody's available to help us, then, you know, and sometimes you don't want to ask because you know that, oh, well, they're doing here this day, they're doing this that time, they got this going on, that going on. And you say, I don't want to bother them. We can handle it. And then before you know it, you got all these things and you're like drowning.
Yeah. No, it's true. That's true. So, yeah.
Shepherd's Canyon, for those of you that don't know, is it's a retreat center, but it's actually also, I think it's Standing Stones Retreat Center, and that's the facility that can be used for a variety of things. But then out of that facility, Shepherd's Canyon retreats operate. I believe they do about one every month. And they do it for pastors and spouses, and they have, it's a week. You go Monday to Monday. So Monday, you arrive kind of in the morning, afternoon, and then that late afternoon, evening, you have dinner, and that's kind of the start of it. And then it goes until Monday morning the next week. You have breakfast and then kind of get on a plane and head back to wherever you came from. And, man, just the facility itself and the people that run it and, they just warm, loving, caring. They all know. They all have a heart for the ministry because they've been through it before. And I remember you, Heather, saying something about listening to one of the people there speaking about their experience where it finally kind of started to click for you, where you started to finally get some healing, getting over the anger and the hurt and all that kind of stuff. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
I think it was the last group thing we did. And obviously I'm not going to go into details, but yes, they were talking, one of the pastors' wives was talking about their experience. And to me, it was probably even way worse than like my experience. But I think that's the moment that the whole thing about anger, hurt, expectations, and the needs underneath it really click for me. Just by knowing that I'm not alone. Like we're all in this together. Like I think that moment I realized, for sure that we're all of us, pastors' wives, we're all in this together. I mean, it's not easy. None of it's easy.
Well, in that specific instance, I think there was something there that can maybe help us pivot to, what can you do to support your pastor, your pastor's family, all that kind of stuff. Was this particular pastor's wife, the general idea was that here are all these people that know that these bad things are happening, that are being said and being done, and they won't stand up and say, hey, this is wrong and you need to do the right thing.
Right.
But they'll come to you quietly, so here's the big, embarrassing, ridiculous thing that is just being done. Your husband has just been dressed down publicly in all these ways that are all lies. It's all made up. It's not how it happened. It's not you maligning the character, right? Mm-hmm. And then quietly, your so-called supporters will basically be like, oh, yeah, well, we know that's not true, and we love you, and we care about you. We, just remember that, kind of quietly, and then walk right out the door on Sunday morning, and you never see him again the rest of the week.
Yeah, people don't want to deal with that.
Yeah,
kind of like they'd rather watch somebody else go down in flames than to stand up and say, "Man, this is truth, and we know that this is really happening, but we're not going to do anything about it because we'd rather just we'll just put it under the rug and leave it there, and it'll go away."
Yeah,
and sometimes it doesn't just go away. So,
well, and for me, that whole experience, we had an experience like that, and one of my big takeaways was just a real distaste for any of the political grandstanding that Christians make kind of in the public square. Like, oh, you got to speak up for what's right. Yeah. You got to speak up for this issue or this candidate or whatever. And I'm like, so you're going to get all bent out of shape about that.
Yeah.
And yet back in your own congregation, there is a tremendous amount of evil, far more evil than whatever it is you're rallying your troops against, because Jesus got pretty angry. This is really like the main time, this cleansing of the temple, where God's house is under attack from within, and everybody just kind of would rather be somewhere else. They'd rather fight another battle. They don't want to fight that battle.
Oh, no.
And then to think about how people that they supposedly love and care for and that are supposed to be leading them, right, are just mercilessly attacked in a variety of ways, spiritually and in lots of other ways. I don't know. Have you ever had that thought, or am I just...
I don't know if I've had the exact thoughts like that, but but yeah, no, definitely people, I mean, I've noticed in most congregations, they don't want to deal with, like, they're very aware of the fact that something is not right, but they are willing to just push it off to the side and pretend like it's not there for the sake of appearances.
Yeah.
That's strong, but yeah, appearances. Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's very true. And that goes back to, well, who's got the most skin in the game?
Right.
And that, again, it comes back to the pastor and the family. And so,
right.
You want to see churches thrive, you need to support pastors and their families in a way that goes beyond just saying nice things and giving gifts and all that kind of stuff, which you got a great gift today.
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I guess if you're watching on Facebook, like, this person knows me super well. I don't think they're on Facebook though, but this is like the biggest mug I've ever received. It says, "I'm down to just 1 cup a day." But I probably drink the equivalent of this, and this is like one of the best gifts I've probably ever received. And that's how much I love you, Open Arms.
I'm wondering if that cup is actually full of coffee, could you lift it?
I don't think so.
Like, could you actually lift it and tilt it to get
I'll have to let you know.
So huge.
It is. Brews. This is more than 1 pot. It says brews 2 pots.
Okay.
That's a lot. I don't think I could lift it though. I don't know. But this person knows me really well. They must watch me on Sundays. No, she's a sweetheart.
They do.
The person who gave it to me is a sweetheart. So, yeah.
So what are some other ways that you think pastors and their families and spouses and all that kind of stuff out there, what do you think are some ways that people can be supportive, to recognize these kinds of things? I mean, obviously, folks, like you've said before, Open Arms is very different and a lot more.
Well, I
caring
won't.
and
So Open Arms has definitely been like that. There in our other congregations, I'm going to say there are the people that have really stepped up, and been
yeah. Sometimes it's just
great,
not enough.
just
Like,
amazing.
there's just never
It's just
enough
like they've been absolutely
because-
amazing, and they know who they are, I'm sure. But I think that like I just know that just somebody just praying for us, like knowing we're going through a hard time and just praying for us, like that's huge. Like
pray
also
with us too.
pray
I would
with
say.
us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just say, oh my gosh, I know you're going through this hard time. Let's just stop and pray. Like just to, just to have that, that with each other. And, I think, I think just knowing people care about us, like our kids, I know that they know that Open Arms absolutely cares about them. And, they, kids, they ask how they're doing. I mean, like, I don't know if I've always seen that, in every congregation we've been in, but just like going to those kids and asking how they're doing. It's hard being pastors' kids. It is not an easy thing at all. And our kids, throughout Emil's ministry, I mean, those hard things, I've tried to really protect them when there's been times when I know stuff is going on and I'm like, no, this is not going to affect my kids' relationship with Jesus. And we're going to step up and we're going to be their spiritual leaders, as we always are, but even more right now. But just to take those minutes and ask my kids how they're genuinely doing, I think that's huge. Even just asking me. I mean, there are times that like, I mean, I have those rough days too. And when somebody comes up and asks me genuinely how I'm doing, I think that is the biggest thing for me. I mean, yeah, this cup was great, but I mean, just for somebody just ask genuinely how I'm doing.
Yeah, people don't have to buy you things.
People don't have to buy me things.
Yeah.
I actually, Emil knows that like I usually never buy things for myself, and he rarely buys things for me because I'm not a big gift person. But somebody taking those minutes just to ask how I'm doing, because there are going to be days that I have a rough time. And usually if somebody asks and there's something going on, I usually am pretty forthright and say, I'm struggling with this. And I will be honest with you. Like I'm not, so.
You better be now.
I am, no. So I am pretty, I'm a very deep person. Like I'm not like a shallow, I don't know. How do I describe this? I don't even know. It's like,
she's not a small talk.
I'm not a small talk. Yeah. I'm not like, how's the weather? I'm like, oh like, goodness. How's the weather?
Like, I can maybe know like 400 different people and,
right.
say, I know this person. I'm friends with that person or whatever.
Right.
But Heather has few friends.
Right.
Fewer friends because she expects more out of the friendship. She's a deeper relational person.
Right. I'm not a weather talker or any of that.
Small talk is not.
Small talk is not my thing. So. Yeah. That's.
Sometimes I have that problem too. Like, but I'll do that with anybody. I'll just go straight to,
Yeah.
What else?
I mean, I think like uplifting you is a big thing too. I mean, are you always going to agree with what your pastor thinks, says, does? No. But that's not a moment to be like, well, let me just make his life miserable. Like, just maybe he made that decision for a reason. Maybe he believes that for a reason. Maybe you need to sit down and have an honest conversation rather than.
Maybe he wished he didn't have to make that decision.
Maybe he wished he didn't have to make that decision.
Maybe he didn't even really make the decision. It was sort of made for him in some ways.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah. So you need to like step out of that and actually have a conversation without putting your guard up. Like, I don't I don't know.
I would rather not make most decisions.
Yeah.
I would rather.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But sometimes you find yourself where you got to make it because no one else is there to make it, which is a sign of the times. There's just fewer people. People are busier. I think people today are actually far busier than they probably were 30, 40, 50 years ago when sort of the church as an institution in America was kind of having its heyday. I think things have actually changed because I feel it. I think you feel it where, you're just pulled away from the institution. There's not this gravitational force pulling people to it. It's all the forces now are kind of pulling it apart. And that happens to us too. So I get it. But we do have to figure out some ways to maintain, how we keep it going well, keep it healthy. In some ways, maybe the pulling apart of the force outwards, right, is a good thing because maybe people won't be so caught up in having a certain thing go a certain way at their congregation, right? And that'll make our lives easier, perhaps. But not if everybody stops coming.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah.
But there are definitely, like you mentioned earlier, there are people that we have encountered along the way that have meant a lot.
Oh yeah.
It's just not always enough. Sometimes it's just not enough. One person can't overcome
all of that.
Yeah, all of the kinds of things that you wind up dealing with. And let's be honest, we're sitting here saying, hey, think about your pastor and his family, and it's very possible that they're the problem too. It's this chaotic mess where, some people I think genuinely have had bad experiences with pastors kind of just going off the rails, that they become perhaps hypercritical or a bit of micromanagement taking place. Right? Pastors are people too.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
But
I think that sometimes people forget that we're just people.
I think Open Arms knows that pretty well.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I think that sometimes they just forget, and then when it comes down to it, I don't know if it's just because they hold us to a higher standard. I don't know, but
yeah,
we're still people, and I think people need to remember that, and we have feelings too, and people need to remember that, and how you act. You got to remember that we're still people, and you might not agree with everything, but yeah.
So if you know a pastor and their family going through something, give them a call, stop by, do something. Don't ask them because they probably won't have something in mind, but they probably just need somebody to talk to. And if it's not you, if they won't talk to you, provide a way for them to talk to someone. Sometimes within church structures, denominations and things, there are people there sort of, but that also becomes kind of a liability because that can impact your professional life too. So you can't always go to some of those places. Sometimes you can. That's really for you to kind of figure out. But then there's places like Shepherd's Canyon Retreat Center. They're not the only one that does this. I'm sure there are plenty of others. This just happens to be the one that we had stumbled across, and it was a beautiful place, way, way out there. And I think just being away was helpful. Just not being inundated with life and being away from the kids. We got 4 kids, so that makes life kind of stressful too. We homeschool, so that's added stress, flexibility also, because I'm off Friday, we're all off Friday, so at least allows opportunities for us to kind of be together. So I would say encourage your pastor to take that time to be with his family too, his or her family. and just make sure that they're doing it. Right? Sometimes they think that they got to solve all the problems. At the very least, tell them, hey, no, you don't have to solve this today. Be with your family, or help them solve the problem. Take that off their plate. Sometimes I've seen guys that are working on some of the most ridiculous things, and I'm like, why?
Mm-hmm.
Don't even bother. If no one else cares, why should you care?
Right.
You know, like, and that's been a growth area for me over the years, just leadership wise. And you can help them in that way. There are things like PLI, the Pastoral Leadership Institute, is something we went through, and that was helpful for us going through some really, really hard things. I don't think we realized how hard it was going to be going through that. But man, I'm glad that we had that, because if we didn't, I don't know how those years would have been. But that's Pastoral Leadership Institute, plileadership.org, I believe, is their website. I didn't think about it beforehand.
That's okay.
I fly by the seat of my pants all the time, honey.
Yeah.
But they do a great job of just being a safe space for pastors and spouses and church workers to talk and to share and to hear other people going through things, and to support and pray and do all kinds of equip with some better thinking, different thinking, focus on the things that matter more, and focusing number one on family and that.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically. So they've been tremendously helpful. If you don't have PLI, if you can't use PLI for some reason, or you don't want to use PLI, find something else, or help your pastor find that, and then just be there in the trenches with them, and be positive. It's real easy to come up with negative. I remember one time in particular, I got this email, and it was like the third email about some ridiculously useless piece of, detail. And it was like, how come I didn't do something? Because here's this person who is relying on it, which the person didn't realize that what I had done was, basically like missed one Sunday off of a 5-Sunday month of information at some point. And I knew I hadn't gotten that, but I sent it out to make sure that it was out, even though I hadn't finished the last piece, kind of thing. And I get this email like, oh, well, so-and-so really relies on that information. You need to give it to him. You need it on time, blah, blah, blah. Give me all this grief because it was maybe a week late, but I'm in my head going, yeah, but it's a 5-week month. It's going to be okay. I have this extra time to get that last one done. And I had something else I was trying to do. Oh, well, so-and-so, blah, 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 all that stuff I just said. And I'm like, why are you so concerned about this person who has basically one thing to do? And here I am. Clearly, I've never shown any indication that I'm lazy or that I would rather not work. Like, I've shown every indication that I actually kind of like doing what I do. I would love to do more things if I could. Obviously, there's limits to that, and maybe sometimes I overcommit, right? So that's something to keep in mind. Sometimes your pastor will overcommit, and you have to help them undercommit. But, why wasn't it, hey, pastor, I see that you missed this last thing, and I know that's unusual.
Right.
Can I help?
No, but that's not the way people.
But that's not the way it works, And the irony is a lot of times, I haven't experienced that here at Open Arms. Again, we keep having this disclaimer because we're kind of processing the past while we're here in a place that we love. Right. But it's think about put the best construction on things. Mm-hmm. Right, and give them the benefit of the doubt, and recognize they're probably doing way more than they should, and probably isn't a big deal in the end. most of what people
like
worry
was
about
that important
is
I don't know.
Is not all that important. So
right.
Anyway, You have any final thoughts? Any last minute things to, if you could speak to a pastor's spouse, and then if you could speak to a pastor, right? Maybe the actual pastors, like, hey, things you wish you would have told me, smack me upside my head, and then maybe the congregations, just a final something for each of them.
I guess for pastors' wives, I would say know that you're not alone, that you're going to have struggles, but definitely you always have Jesus, and you should, you have your spouse, you have your family, you have people to lean on, and you should lean on people, and just know that you're not alone. Pastors, I would say remember your families during the week, definitely. And lots of pastors sometimes get really caught up in their ministry. And I would say your family is an important part of that too. So during the week, definitely remember to take that day off, and remember to spend that time with those important people. In congregations, I would just say find ways that you can support your pastors and your pastors' wives and your pastors' family. Even if it's just as small as just taking a minute to pray for them, and just find ways to care for them, because it's not easy being in ministry all the time. There are great moments, and there are some not great moments. So,
yeah, I think what you said is great. You should lean on Jesus for the wives. You should lean on people.
Yeah.
Pastors, remember your families. I do a pretty good job of staying strict with my time home. But I will say the one thing I probably struggle with other pastors out there listening is being home, not just physically, but mentally.
Yeah.
Working on some things to disconnect.
Like putting the phone away.
Putting the phone away, but even putting the phone away is just the first step. The next one is like mentally disconnecting from it and resting.
Yeah.
And then congregations. We are on vicarage. I remember sitting down with this guy, LJ, and he said, man, like he just had this admiration. I was a vicar at the time, which is basically an intern, like you're training to be a pastor, for those of you that don't know our denomination's language, jargon. And I just remember him, I was in their house sitting down. I think I was going to start some kind of program with their son and another kid, a scouting program with their faith. And he just looked at me like, oh, man, you are just, like, no joke, man. You're into this. You're serious. Like, you're awesome. I'm like, really? I've never heard that before. It's like, yeah, well, you signed up for the whole thing. Like, you got this enormous target on your back now. Satan's after you.
Yeah.
He's going to be after you. And I think more often than not, my issues at home especially are because Satan is messing with me somehow. So,
yeah.
So pray for your pastors, your pastors' families, and all that, because it is definitely, there is a target on our backs, all of our backs. And I think that's primarily probably what keeps congregations and the church at large, the people of God, from moving into the places and areas that he really wants us to go. So that's it. Okay. Thanks for coming in. You did it. Give me a 5.
Thank you.
It wasn't so bad, was it?
No, it wasn't too bad, but
I'm sure
definitely not in my comfort zone.
I'm sure most of the comments will be positive if we.
We'll see. We'll see.
If we get any.
Yeah, give me some encouraging.
Yeah, say some positive.
Be encouraging. Don't tell me, oh man, that was
share
bad.
Your story. Comment, subscribe. Tell us if you're in ministry. Tell us what
Yeah.
you're doing to support your pastor and family, or if you're a
Right.
pastor and spouse and family, chime in. Are we crazy here? What did we miss?
Yeah, for sure.
What else have you experienced? What are some better ways to help support pastors and families in ministry? So good to be with you.
Yeah.
Heather almost finished her pralines and soup,
I tried.
but
I tried.
close enough.
I'm more of a coffee person, as you know.
It was like
I displayed
11:30
before.
when I scooped it, so that's a little early.
It's all good.
We are going to do ice
It's
cream
all
for
good.
breakfast on
February what?
6th.
February 6th.
And you can
Yeah.
do it on the 5th on Saturday and have it twice.
Ooh.
All right, y'all.
All right.
Hey, good to be with you. Thanks for stopping by. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Ice cream is sweet, but Jesus is